Hello and welcome back to the SEND 35A appeal form walkthrough video. This video is part 2 of 4 videos taking you through the SEND 35A appeal form against an LA decision not to secure an EHC needs assessment. Section 2 is the main bulk of the form, the reasons for appeal. It is really important here to understand the legal test I mentioned in the last video. This legal test is contained in Section 36(8) of the Children and Families Act 2014 and says that the local authority must secure an EHC needs assessment for the child or young person if, after having regard to any views expressed and evidence submitted under subsection 7, the authority is of the opinion that a. The child or young person has or may have special educational needs or SEN, and b. It may be necessary for special educational provision to be made for the child or young person in accordance with an EHC plan. What this means is that in order for the LA to agree to assess, your EHC needs assessment request should demonstrate that your child or young person has or may have SEN and that they may need provision through an EHC plan. The key word here is may. This means that you do not have to evidence a definitive diagnosis, but you must evidence that there may be SEN and that the provision required to support may have to be delivered through an EHC plan. The latter part of this refers to provision that is above and beyond what is ordinarily provided within a school's SEN resources. So, what should you write in this section? It is quite nicely split into the two parts of the legal test, so I'll go through these in logical order. At this point, I will stop and refer you to our guidance document, which you can see here on the video, as it provides a template to support you in completing this part of the form. A link to this document can be found in the comment section below or on our website. As this page doesn't leave the biggest amount of space to write your answer, you could write your responses on a separate Word document and write "Please see attached sheet" clearly in each box. That way the tribunal will know there's an attached document. When you're writing, don't feel pressured to write technically or use legal jargon. There is no expectations for parents or carers to write in this way. Keep it clear and concise and true to your opinions and experience. The first question is whether the child or young person has or may have SEN. You can start here with any diagnoses your child or young person has and include when they have received the diagnosis. In saying this, remember your child does not need to have a diagnosis. As you can see from our template, it is also an opportunity to list any other identified SEN from educational setting, health professionals, or that you have identified at home. Any needs that has been identified that impacts your child or young person's ability to access education is relevant. If unsure, you could ask your child's SENCO for copies of their support plan or IEP, as the educational setting should have made their own assessments as to what SEN your child has and what support is required. We'll run through examples and strategies to help you with this question in the next few slides. A way you can frame this answer is by splitting your responses into the 4 main areas of need. Those are 1. Communication and interaction, 2. Cognition and learning, 3. Social, emotional, mental health, or SEMH, and 4. Sensory and physical. Sometimes this helps guide your thoughts a bit more and is a clear, structured way to list your child or young person's SEN. This can also be helpful as there may be certain things your child struggles with that you may not associate with SEN. For example, being unable to wear particular clothing, which may have an impact on ability to adhere to uniform policy. There are some examples under each heading which are not exhaustive by any means and may not be relevant to your child or young person. Do still pause this slide and take a minute to look through these examples as they may help organise your thoughts. A good thing to keep in mind is what is the impact. You might say, my child struggles with loud noises, and that is perfectly valid, but what is the impact of this in the context of school or education? Does it mean they have to wear ear defenders? or do they struggle with transitions around the school? Maybe they might struggle with the classroom and the number of pupils and the loud volume. When you're writing your responses, it is helpful to keep things as concise as possible. Consider using bullet points here. You do not have to get bogged down in providing all the history of all the difficulties just for that legal test. The child has or may have SEN. If you have evidence to back up the needs you have described, you can make reference to this here. For example, please see ASC report dated. Remember though, a diagnosis is not required for an EHC needs assessment. For the second question, it asks you to describe any unidentified SEN. This might be something that needs exploring further, for example, unidentified sensory needs or learning gaps that haven't been explained through professional intervention. This also might include a situation where your child or young person is on the waiting list for assessment or diagnosis. It could also be recent changes in behaviour where the cause or the trigger is not clear. If this applies to you, it will be helpful to provide evidence pertaining to any assessments you're awaiting or investigations, for example, a confirmation letter of appointment or acceptance of referral. Finally, the third question asks you to explain why your child requires an EHC plan. Remember, here we're looking at whether they may need provision that goes above what is ordinarily available. This is the opportunity to explain what has been in place to support your child and the impact of this. Again, you may need to go to your child's SENCO for this information. Schools should keep records of support in place and regularly review and adapt this according to the child or young person's needs. This process is called Assess, Plan, Do, Review. This information will be vital in demonstrating what has been in place so far and the impact of this. Other questions to ask that may be relevant here are: has your child been excluded, informally or formally? Have referrals been made to external services, for example, EP, the educational psychologist, but there's been no impact? Has your child's attendance been impacted? Are they working below age-related expectations or below their peers? All of these scenarios point towards the need for increased support and provision and will be important to present to the tribunal at this point. Again, the question is, what has been the impact of support so far? So there's lots of information to process and remember so far. So I've just summarised the key top tips to keep in mind when you're completing your reasons for appeal. Number 1, keep things concise. Consider the use of bullet points. Number 2, don't get caught up in the history. Stick to the questions being asked. Number 3, consider using the 4 main areas of SEN. Number 4, always remember what is the impact and come back to this in the question. And number 5, do use our guidance document and the template addendum form, which is referred to in a previous slide. This runs through the appeal form step by step and gives you clear examples to help guide your thoughts. So what support can you expect from us here at SendIS? First and foremost, we are an impartial service and we are not solicitors or legal representatives. This means we cannot and do not write appeal forms on behalf of parents or carers or young people. Our role is to support you in understanding the appeal process and, where necessary, support you in capturing your views. Whilst this is your appeal, we can support you in presenting your case to the local authority and the tribunal within the context of the law and your rights. So what can you expect from us? We will explain the tribunal processes stage by stage and empower you to understand and complete these processes confidently. We will provide access to specific guidance documents and templates to support you in completing the appeal form. We can then provide feedback on the first draft of your appeal form and others where relevant. This feedback does not tell you what is right or wrong, but will be guided by our knowledge of the legal tests we've spoken about and the conversation we have had with you about your case. We will never tell you what to write. So that brings us to the end of part 2 of 4 of the SEND 35A walkthrough. To continue with the remaining sections of the appeal form, please see our next video, part 3. Thank you for listening.